The message came through at 11:52 p.m. 4 words that violated every boundary he'd ever enforced. I need you now. Pak Chinhi didn't keep his phone on during negotiations. Ever. He was the heir to Seoul's most feared syndicate. Cold, calculating, unreachable by design. But when his child's nanny sent that text,
We have to go!
something inside him
Run!
snapped.
Get
8 minutes
outta
later,
here!
he was at her door. She answered, holding a wine bottle. Trembling in a white silk robe, her phone clutched to her chest like a lifeline. Drunk, vulnerable, and terrified of what she'd just done. Because here's what neither of them understood yet. That text didn't just cross a line. It detonated a war between duty and desire that would leave bodies in its wake. His neck tattoos, inked reminders of everything he'd lost, were visible beneath his loosened collar. His suit jacket hung open. He'd abandoned a room full of armed men to stand in her doorway, one tattooed hand braced high against the frame, towering over her like a storm she'd summoned without knowing the cost. She looked up at him with wide eyes, realizing too late. You don't wake a dragon and expect mercy. This is what happened when Seoul's most dangerous man discovered his weakness had a name. Subscribe to see how this unfolds and comment where you're watching from. I will love to say hello to you just to know how far our story is going. The Maserati's engine screamed as Chinhi tore through the rain-slicked streets of Gangnam, his knuckles white against the steering wheel. The speedometer climbed past 140 kilometers per hour. The city blurred into streaks of neon and darkness. I need you now. 4 words. That's all it took to pull him from a room where men twice his age were negotiating territorial lines with threats disguised as respect. He'd been mid-sentence when his phone vibrated in his inner pocket, a phone that should have been off, that was off for everyone except 3 numbers. The emergency line to his security team, his second in command. And her. The nanny wasn't supposed to text him. Ever. That was the arrangement. She was paid an obscene amount of money to care for Minji, to exist in the guest wing of his Hanam-dong estate like a benevolent ghost, and to never involve him in the domestic machinery of his own home. That's what the household manager was for. That's what the security detail was for. He'd looked at the screen and felt his blood turn to ice. Lieutenant Choi had called after him as he stood, the chair scraping against marble with a sound like a blade being drawn. Sejongnim, the Jongmi terms. Handle it. 2 words, delivered without looking back, and then he was moving. Now the Han River Bridge stretched before him, slick and nearly empty at this hour. The rain hammered his windshield, each drop caught in the headlights like a bullet suspended in time. His mind was already at war with itself, running through scenarios with the cold precision of a man trained since childhood to expect betrayal. Intruders, the most likely. Despite the ex-military security detail, the cameras, the reinforced doors, there were always gaps. The Jangmi clan had been circling for months, probing for weaknesses. If they'd discovered Minji's existence, if they'd somehow traced the paper trail he'd buried under shell corporations and falsified documents, his jaw clenched. He'd built an empire on fear, but that was nothing compared to the terror that lived in his chest every time he thought about his niece. 5 years old. The last piece of his brother. The only thing in this world that could make a man like him vulnerable. Is the child hurt? Anna would have said so, wouldn't she? The text was too vague, too short, like she'd been interrupted, like she'd sent it with trembling fingers while someone stood behind her, a gun to her head, waiting. He pressed harder on the accelerator. The Maserati hydroplaned for half a second before the tires caught. He didn't slow down. The tattoos on his neck felt like they were burning beneath his collar. Names inked in Hangul script, hidden beneath Italian wool and starched cotton during business hours, visible only in moments like this when the veneer cracked. His brother's name curved along his left side. His sister-in-law's on the right. Reminders. Warnings. Proof that everyone he'd ever loved had been taken from him in a single night of violence. Everyone except Minji. And he'd kept her alive by keeping her invisible. By maintaining the lie that Pak Chinhi was exactly what the underworld believed. A man without attachments. without weakness, without a heart that could be targeted. The nanny was the only one who knew. Anna Fieri, with her warm American accent and her ridiculous optimism, who sang Disney songs while cooking breakfast and who made Minji laugh in a way that sounded like music he'd forgotten existed. He'd hired her through 6 layers of security screening, threatened her with contracts that would destroy her family if she ever spoke about the child, and then paid her enough money to ensure her silence was comfortable. She wasn't supposed to need him. The tires shrieked as he took the exit too fast, barely keeping the car from spinning out. His security detail was probably scrambling to follow, confused by his sudden departure, but he'd disabled his tracker the moment he left the building. This wasn't a situation for an entourage. If something had happened to Minji, if Anna had failed in the one job that mattered— No, he couldn't think like that. Not yet. The guest wing was separate from the main house, accessible through a private entrance that most of his staff didn't even know existed. He'd designed it that way deliberately. The nanny's apartment was her domain, a space where Minji could be a normal child, where the stench of his world couldn't quite reach. He abandoned the car at an angle in the circular drive, not bothering to close the door. Rain soaked through his suit jacket in seconds. He took the steps, 3 at a time, his hand already reaching for the gun holstered at his back, a Beretta 92 FS, fully loaded, safety off. The door was closed. No signs of forced entry. No broken glass, no splintered wood. The security camera above the frame blinked its steady red, undisturbed. That should have calmed him. It didn't. He knocked no, pounded his fist, striking the door 3 times with enough force to rattle the frame. His other hand stayed on the gun. Anna. His voice was steel and smoke. Open the door. Footsteps. Slow, shuffling. Not the sound of someone running from danger. The lock clicked. Once. Twice. She was using the deadbolt he'd installed himself, the one he'd shown her how to engage in case of emergency. The door opened. Time did something strange. It slowed, then stopped, then restarted with a stutter. She stood there in a white silk robe that caught the warm light from inside, her natural hair pulled back in a style that had clearly been neat hours ago, but was now disheveled. The robe was loose, hanging open enough to reveal pajamas underneath gray cotton, nothing seductive, just soft, human. In one hand, she clutched a wine bottle by its neck like it was a weapon she didn't know how to use. In the other, her blue phone case gleamed, the one with cartoon characters Minji had picked out for her birthday, and she was crying. Not the delicate tears of a damsel in distress. These were the messy, hiccuping sobs of someone who'd already been crying for a while, whose face was blotchy, and whose eyes were red-rimmed, and whose nose was running in a way that should have been unattractive but somehow made her look more real than anyone he'd seen in years. She looked up at him, because even in the doorway she seemed small next to him, and her mouth fell open slightly, wide-eyed shock. Fear, but not of violence, fear of consequence. You, her voice cracked. You came. The adrenaline crash hit him like a physical blow. His body had been primed for war, muscles coiled, heart hammering, every nerve screaming protect, destroy, eliminate, and there was nothing to fight. No intruders, no blood, no broken child, just a drunk woman crying in her bathrobe, holding a phone like a confession. The fury came fast and white-hot. He stepped forward, forcing her back into the apartment, and she stumbled slightly, catching herself against the wall. He filled the doorway completely, one tattooed hand braced high against the frame, the other finally releasing the gun to hang at his side. Rain dripped from his hair, from his shoulders, pooling on her floor. You had to stop. Start again. His voice was too loud, too sharp, edged with the kind of violence that made grown men flinch. Where is Minji? Sleeping. Anna's answer came out small, guilty. She's been asleep since 8. I checked on her 20 minutes ago. She's fine. You texted me, I need you now. Each word was a bullet. During a negotiation. Do you understand what that means? What I thought, he couldn't finish. Couldn't say out loud that he'd been imagining his niece's blood on these floors, that he'd broken 3 traffic laws and abandoned $500,000 in negotiations because 4 words from a nanny had made him believe his entire world was ending. Anna flinched, and new tears spilled down her cheeks. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I wasn't thinking. She looked at the wine bottle in her hand like she'd forgotten it was there. I needed. What? The question came out harsh. He was still standing too close, looming over her in a way that would terrify anyone with sense. What did you need? She opened her mouth, closed it. More tears. She turned away from him, walking deeper into the apartment on unsteady legs, and he realized with a cold certainty that she was drunk. Actually drunk. The wine bottle was 3/4 empty. The door was still open behind him. Rain was coming in. His security detail would arrive in minutes, and they couldn't see him like this disheveled, emotional, standing in the nanny's apartment past midnight. He should leave, should turn around and pretend this never happened. Instead, he stepped inside and closed the door. The apartment was warm. Soft. It smelled like vanilla and something he eventually identified as the lavender lotion Anna used. Minji's toys were scattered across the living room. Floor blocks, picture books, a stuffed rabbit wearing a pink dress. Evidence of normal life. Of childhood. Things he'd never been allowed to have. His eyes swept the space with professional precision. Windows. Locked. Security panel. Armed. No signs of disturbance. He moved through the apartment anyway, checking the bedroom where Minji slept, yes. There she was, curled under a mountain of blankets, breathing deep and even, completely unaware, and then the other rooms, the bathroom, even the closets. Nothing. No one. Just him and a drunk nanny in the rain hammering against the windows. When he returned to the living room, Anna was sitting on the couch with her face in her hands, shoulders shaking. The wine bottle sat on the coffee table, mocking him. He crossed the room in 3 strides and picked it up. Cheap Cabernet, the kind you bought at convenience stores. The label was garish. This, he said, his voice still cold but quieter now, is terrible wine. She looked up at him. Mascara streaked down her face, and let out a sound that was half laugh, half sob. I know. If you're going to drink yourself into hysteria, at least do it with something that doesn't taste like battery acid. That startled a real laugh out of her, short and sharp. You came all the way here to critique my wine choices? I came because you sent an emergency text. He set the bottle down harder than necessary. Want to explain why? The laugh died. Anna wrapped her arms around herself, suddenly looking very small in the oversized robe. I don't know. I've been here for 6 months, and I never leave this apartment except to take Minji to the garden. I never talk to anyone except a 5-year-old and sometimes the security guards who won't even look at me because you told them not to. And tonight I felt like I was disappearing, like if I screamed, no one would hear me. She looked up at him, and her eyes were so raw it made something in his chest twist. So I texted you. Because you're the only person whose number I have. And I didn't think you'd actually come. I thought maybe you'd send someone to check on me, or fire me, or I don't know. I didn't think you'd care? The word came out wrong. Too soft. Exist, she corrected quietly. I didn't think you existed outside of those 3-minute conversations in the morning when you ask if Minji is well. You're like a ghost in your own house. And I know that's the point. I signed the contracts. I understand why. But tonight Her voice broke. I'm so lonely. He should leave. This was already too much. Too personal. Too dangerous. He'd confirmed Minji was safe. That was all that mattered. Anna's mental state wasn't his problem. He had a dozen trained staff who could handle this. Could find her a therapist. He sat down on the edge of the couch. Not next to her. That would be too close. But near enough that she could reach out if she wanted to. Near enough that he could smell the wine on her breath and see the way her hands were shaking. "I'm going to get you water," he said. It wasn't a question. He stood, moved to her kitchen, found a glass in the cabinet, filled it from the tap. When he returned, she was staring at her phone like it had betrayed her. "Drink." He held out the glass. She took it with both hands. Docile. Drank half of it in one go, then set it on the table. "You're being nice to me. That's more terrifying than when you yell." "I don't yell." "You were about to." At the door. I could see it. She looked at him, and there was something clearer in her eyes now, more focused. "Your tattoos are showing." His hand went to his neck automatically. The collar of his shirt had come open, the top 2 buttons undone. The edge of the ink was visible above his white undershirt, black script against skin that was usually hidden. He should button it back up. Instead, he found himself lowering his hand. "Do they scare you?" he asked. "No." She said it immediately. "They make you look human." That almost made him laugh. "I assure you, I'm very human." "Are you?" Anna tilted her head, studying him with the blunt honesty of the drunk. "Because most humans don't abandon important meetings to check on their employees. Most humans don't drive like they're running from the devil. Most humans—" She gestured vaguely at him. "Most humans don't look at people the way you looked at me at the door, like you were ready to burn down the world." He didn't answer. Couldn't answer. Because she was right. And that was the problem. "Tell me about the loneliness," he said instead, deflecting. "No." She shook her head. "You first. Tell me why you came." "You texted me." "That's not an answer." Her voice was stronger now, less tearful. The water was helping. Or maybe it was having someone to talk to, even if that someone was her employer. "You could have called. Could have sent security. You came yourself. Why?" Because Minji was all he had left. Because the thought of losing her made him want to set the city on fire. Because he'd failed his brother once and he couldn't fail again. But he didn't say any of that. "You're my employee. I'm responsible for your safety." Anna laughed, and it was bitter. "Right. The cold, scary boss who never speaks to me, who watches from security cameras and communicates through staff members, who looks through me like I'm furniture." She met his eyes, and hers were fierce now. "You don't care about my safety. You care about Minji. And that's fine. That's your job. But don't pretend this is about me." Something in him snapped. "You want the truth?" He leaned forward, and she had to tilt her head back to keep looking at him. "When I saw that text, I thought someone had broken in. I thought they'd found Minji. I thought I was going to walk in here and find—" His jaw clenched so hard it hurt. "So yes, I came for her. But you texted, which means they would have hurt you first. And that—" He stopped. He'd said too much. Anna's expression had changed, softened. "You were scared. I'm never scared." "Liar." She said it without malice, almost gently. "You were terrified. I could see it. The way your hand went to your back, you brought a gun, didn't you?" He didn't confirm or deny. She reached out slowly, giving him time to pull away, and touched his hand. Her fingers were warm. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to scare you. I was drunk and stupid and so goddamn lonely that I thought, maybe if I just—" She trailed off, looking at their hands. "I don't know what I thought." He should move his hand, should stand up, should leave. He stayed. "Tell me," he said quietly, "about the loneliness." So she did. It poured out of her in a rush how she'd taken this job to pay off her mother's medical debt, how she'd thought the isolation would be temporary, how she loved Minji with a fierceness that surprised her but couldn't talk to anyone about the child, couldn't share photos or stories or any of the normal things nannies did. How she felt like she was living in a beautiful cage with everything she needed except human connection. How she watched the sun set over Seoul every night and wondered if anyone would notice if she disappeared. "And you," she said, and her eyes were on him now, clear and direct, despite the alcohol in her system. "You make it worse. Because you're here, technically. You live in the same house, but you avoid us like we're contagious. You speak to me like I'm a robot receiving commands. And I know that's the arrangement. That's what I signed up for. But sometimes I hear you in the hallway, and I think maybe you'll knock. Maybe you'll come in and play with Minji for 5 minutes. Maybe you'll... She stopped, shook her head. I'm not making sense. You want me to be less cold, he said. I want you to be less absent. Her hand was still on his. That little girl draws you pictures. Did you know that? She leaves them outside your bedroom door. I find them there in the morning, still where she placed them, and you never say anything about them. Never thank her. Never. Her voice broke. She thinks you don't love her. That hit him like a bullet. She said that. No, she doesn't say anything about you. Which is worse. Anna pulled her hand back, wiped at her face. I shouldn't have said that. I'm drunk. I don't mean to... It's fine. It wasn't fine. Nothing about this was fine. Keep talking. So she did. For an hour, maybe more, Anna vented about the isolation, about how cold and scary he was, about how she sometimes heard him come home late and wanted to ask if he was okay but didn't dare. How she'd started drinking wine at night because it made the silence easier to bear. How she'd sent that text in a moment of weakness, expecting nothing, and had been shocked when he'd actually... You came, she said again, like she still couldn't believe it. You really came. I did. Why? It was barely a whisper. He looked at her, really looked at her for the first time since he'd hired her. At the way her robe had slipped slightly off one shoulder, at the exhaustion in her face that went deeper than one late night, at the phone still clutched in her hand like a lifeline she didn't know she'd been holding. Because, he said slowly, choosing his words carefully, you were right. I do exist only in 3-minute conversations and security footage. I made myself into a ghost because ghosts can't be targeted, can't be hurt, can't lose anyone else. His hand went to his neck, to the tattoos. But tonight, when I saw your text, I stopped being a ghost. I became human, she finished softly. Terrified, he corrected. Which is the same thing. The rain had softened to a steady patter against the windows. The apartment felt smaller now, warmer, intimate in a way that made him uncomfortable. You should sleep, he said, standing abruptly. It's late. Anna looked up at him, and her expression was complicated. Are you going to fire me? No. Are you going to pretend this never happened? He wanted to say yes. That would be easier, safer. But when he opened his mouth, what came out was, I don't know. She nodded like she understood. Thank you. For coming. She gestured vaguely, for being human for one night. He turned to leave, then stopped at the door. Without looking back, he said, the pictures. Minji's pictures. I keep them. Every single one. In my desk drawer. Behind him, he heard Anna's soft intake of breath. He left before she could respond. The morning came too bright and too early. Anna woke with a pounding headache and a sense of creeping mortification that made her want to burrow under the covers and never emerge. She'd texted her boss, her Mafia boss employer. At midnight, drunk, she'd cried on him. She'd touched his hand. She'd called him cold and scary and absent, and she groaned into her pillow. Minji was already awake, singing to herself in her bedroom. The sound was cheerful and innocent, and made Anna's guilt somehow worse. She dragged herself out of bed, found ibuprofen, drank 3 glasses of water, and tried to make herself presentable. The empty wine bottle on the coffee table was gone. The glass of water sat exactly where she'd left it. Had she dreamed the whole thing? Had Pak Chinhi really sat on her couch and listened to her ramble about loneliness for an hour? No. His wet footprints were still on her floor. Evidence. She wanted to die. Minji appeared in the doorway, dragging her stuffed rabbit. Anna, I'm hungry. Of course, sweetheart. Let's make breakfast. They went through the morning routine on autopilot. Anna made rice and eggs. cut fruit into shapes, poured juice. Minji chattered about her dreams, something involving unicorns and ice cream, while Anna tried not to think about the fact that she would probably be fired by lunch. The door to the main house was usually kept closed. It was a boundary, a clear line that said, "This is your world, that is his." Anna never crossed it unless specifically summoned. This morning, it opened. Anna froze. A piece of strawberry halfway to Minji's plate. Pak Chinhi walked into the kitchen. He walked into the kitchen. A room he had never, in 6 months of her employment, entered during daylight hours. A room she was fairly certain he didn't even know existed beyond an abstract concept. He was wearing a different suit, charcoal gray, perfectly pressed, with a black tie that was knotted with mathematical precision. His collar was buttoned all the way up. The tattoos were invisible again. His hair was styled back from his face, and he looked every inch the cold, untouchable crime boss who negotiated territories over expensive whiskey, except he was in her kitchen at 8:47 a.m., while she was still in her pajamas and yesterday's shame. "Uncle!" Minji's face lit up like she'd been given the best gift in the world. She nearly knocked over her juice in excitement. "You're here! Are you eating with us?" Anna's mouth opened, closed. No sound came out. Chinhi's expression didn't change, but his eyes went to Anna for just a second. Something passed between them, acknowledgement, maybe, or warning, or agreement. He pulled out a chair and sat down at the small kitchen table. Minji was vibrating with joy, already chattering about her unicorn dreams, while Anna stood there holding a plate and trying to remember how to breathe. Chinhi looked at her again, and this time the corner of his mouth moved. Not quite a smile. Something smaller, more dangerous. "Buy better wine next time," he said. The words hung in the air. Not a dismissal, not anger. Something else entirely. A joke, maybe. Or an acknowledgement. Or a promise that this, whatever this was, wasn't over. Anna set down the plate before she dropped it. "Yes, sir. Chinhi," he corrected quietly. "My name is Chinhi." Minji was oblivious, already trying to show him a drawing she'd made. But Anna understood what had just shifted, what boundary had just been redrawn. She picked up the coffee pot with shaking hands. "Coffee? Please." He took the cup from her. Their fingers brushed. And when he looked at her this time, there was something in his expression that made her breath catch. Not fear, not anymore, but something far more complicated, something that felt like a beginning. The shift happened in increments so small Anna almost didn't notice at first. On Wednesday, Chinhi came home at 7 instead of 11. She heard his footsteps in the main house, the sound of a door closing, and then silence. On Thursday, she found a bag on the kitchen counter when she woke up Reese's peanut butter cups, the kind she'd mentioned in her drunken confession, the kind you couldn't easily find in Seoul. Minji had squealed with delight, thinking they were for her. Anna had stared at the orange packaging and felt something warm and dangerous unfurl in her chest. On Friday, he came for breakfast again. This time he stayed for 20 minutes, listening to Minji explain the complex politics of her stuffed animal kingdom. He didn't smile, but he listened, actually listened. Anna poured his coffee and tried not to think about how his fingers had felt against hers. By the following Tuesday, it had become routine. Breakfast, coffee, Minji's chatter filling the space where awkward silence used to live. And sometimes, not always, but sometimes Chinhi would look at Anna when Minji wasn't paying attention, and his expression would soften in a way that made her forget how to breathe. What Anna didn't know was that late at night, after Minji was asleep and the estate had gone quiet, Chinhi sat in his office with his tablet open to the Nanny cam feeds. Not to spy. Not anymore, but to watch. He watched Anna dance with Minji to American pop songs, both of them laughing and spinning in circles. He watched her read bedtime stories with different voices for each character. Watched Minji's face light up with joy. He watched Anna collapse on the couch afterward, exhausted but smiling, and he wondered when the last time was that he'd smiled like that. if he ever had. He started making lists in his mind. Things she mentioned in passing, her favorite brand of tea, the novel she'd been trying to find in English, the specific type of lotion she used that made the apartment smell like lavender. The gifts appeared without explanation. A book left on her nightstand. A canister of Earl Grey in the cupboard. She never said anything, but he saw the way her eyes would widen, the small smile she tried to hide. He also updated the security protocols. One evening, he appeared at her door with a laminated card containing a single phone number. "Memorize this," he said, his tone leaving no room for argument. "If anything happens, anything you call this number, it goes directly to Stoneface. He answers in 2 rings or less." Anna had tucked the card into her wallet and repeated the number until it was burned into her memory, hoping she'd never need to use it. He was playing a dangerous game, and he knew it. Every breakfast, every gift, every moment he spent in that kitchen was a breach in the walls he'd built. But he couldn't seem to stop. 3 weeks after the night she'd texted him, Anna took Minji grocery shopping. It was a rare outing, carefully coordinated with the security team. The store was in Itaewon, one of the few neighborhoods where Anna's foreignness didn't draw stares. Minji loved these trips, loved picking out snacks and helping push the cart. Anna was comparing prices on rice when she felt it, that prickling awareness of being watched. She turned, scanning the aisle, and saw a man at the far end. Tall, Korean, wearing a black jacket, staring directly at her. She told herself she was being paranoid. Seoul was a city of 10 million people. Being looked at meant nothing, but when she moved to the next aisle, he followed, and the next aisle, and the next. Minji was oblivious, singing to herself while examining a display of cookies. Anna's heart started to pound. She should call security, but her detail was waiting outside Chinhi's orders, to maintain the illusion of normalcy for Minji. The man approached. His smile was wrong, too wide, showing too many teeth. He spoke in rapid Korean, gesturing at Minji, then at Anna. She didn't understand the words, but she understood the tone. Threat. Mockery. "I don't speak Korean," Anna said, pulling Minji closer. Her voice was steady despite the fear climbing her throat. "Please leave us alone." The man laughed and stepped closer. He reached out toward Minji or toward Anna. She couldn't tell. And then he was on the ground. It happened so fast, Anna barely processed it. One of Chinhi's security guards, the one she'd mentally nicknamed Stoneface, because he never showed emotion, had materialized out of nowhere and swept the man's legs out from under him. Another guard appeared, pinning the man's arms behind his back with brutal efficiency. Korean words flew back and forth, harsh and clipped. The man on the ground was shouting, struggling. Stoneface said something low and threatening, and the man went very still. More security arrived. They hauled the man up and dragged him toward the back of the store. Other shoppers were staring now, whispering. Minji had gone quiet, her eyes wide. Stoneface turned to Anna. "We leave. Now." She didn't argue. She abandoned the cart and scooped Minji into her arms, following the guards out through a service exit. A black SUV was already waiting, engine running. They were in the vehicle and moving before Anna could catch her breath. Who was that?" she asked. Stoneface was in the passenger seat. He didn't turn around. "Jangmi Scout." He was identifying targets. The words hit her like ice water. "Targets. You. The child." He was taking photographs. Anna looked down at Minji, who had her face buried in Anna's shoulder, and felt the fear transform into something sharp and cold. "How did you know? How did you get there so fast?" "Boss is tracking your phone." Stoneface said it like it was obvious, like it was normal. "He saw you stop moving. Called us. Chinhi was watching. Even when he wasn't there, he was watching." Anna didn't know if that made her feel safer or more trapped. That night, after Minji was asleep, Anna sat on her couch with a cup of tea and tried to calm her shaking hands. The tea was Earl Grey, the kind Chinhi had left for her. The irony wasn't lost on her. She pulled up her phone and started typing a resignation letter. She got as far as "Dear Mr. Pack" before she had to stop, tears blurring her vision. She loved Minji. God, she loved that little girl like she was her own. But this, the danger, the violence, the casual way Stoneface had said targets like it was inevitable, this wasn't what she'd signed up for. Except it was. She'd read the contracts. She'd seen the security measures. She'd known, on some abstract level, that Chinhi's world was dangerous. She just hadn't understood what that meant until a man with dead eyes had reached for a 5-year-old in a grocery store. She needed to leave. For her own safety. For her own sanity. A knock at the door made her jump, tea sloshing over the rim of her cup. She knew who it was before she opened it. Security would have called first. Staff wouldn't come this late. There was only one person who appeared at her door after midnight. Chinhi stood in the hallway, still wearing his suit but with the jacket gone and his sleeves rolled up to his elbows. The tattoos on his hands were visible ink crawling across his knuckles, disappearing under the fabric. His hair was disheveled, like he'd been running his hands through it. "You're leaving," he said. Not a question. "How did you—" He cut her off. "I saw you typing something. The nanny cam." He nodded toward the window. His office had a view of her apartment, too. "Of course it did. I called to check on you. You didn't answer. Can I come in?" She should say no. Should hand him the letter and end this before it went any further. Instead, she stepped aside. He walked in, but this time he didn't patrol the apartment or check for threats. He just stood there, hands in his pockets, looking at her with an expression she couldn't read. "The man at the store," Anna started. "Stoneface said he was." "Jangmi." "Yes." Chinhi's jaw tightened. "He's being handled." "Handled." She let out a sharp laugh. "Is that what we're calling it?" "I was identified. Chinhi. Someone took my picture. Took Minji's picture. For what? To hurt you? To threaten you?" Yes. The blunt honesty was somehow worse than a lie would have been. Anna sank onto the couch, suddenly exhausted. "I can't do this. I can't. Minji deserves better than to be a target. She deserves to be safe." "She is safe." He moved closer, and she was reminded of that first night, the way he'd filled her doorway. But this time, there was no violence in his posture. Only intensity. "I have 24-hour security. Armored vehicles. Safe houses across the city. She has every protection I can buy. Except normalcy. Except a childhood that doesn't involve armed guards at the grocery store." Anna looked up at him. "I'm leaving. I'm sorry. I'll stay until you find a replacement, but I can't." "No." He said it quietly, but with absolute finality. "You can't stop me from quitting. I can if you listen to me first." He crouched down so they were at eye level, and his hands came up like he wanted to touch her but didn't quite dare. "Please, just listen." She nodded, not trusting her voice. Chinhi reached for his collar. Slowly, deliberately, he unbuttoned his shirt. 1 button. 2. 3. He pulled the fabric aside, revealing his neck, his collarbone, the full extent of the ink that usually stayed hidden. Anna had seen glimpses before, but never like this. Never all of it at once. Names. Dates. Hangul script intertwined with images, cherry blossoms and waves, and a small bird mid-flight. It was beautiful and terrible all at once. "My brother," he said, touching the left side of his neck. "Lee Jin-ho. He died 4 years ago. Car bomb meant for me. His wife." His fingers traced the right side. "Park Sunmi. Same night. They left behind." "Minji," Anna whispered. "She's not my daughter. She's my responsibility. My penance." His voice cracked slightly. "I failed them. I got careless. And they died. And Minji was at a playdate or she would have died too. So I made her disappear. New identity. New records, as far as the world knows. Pak Chinhi has no family. No weaknesses." Anna reached out, her fingers hovering over the tattoos. "Can I?" He nodded. She touched his neck gently, tracing the characters she couldn't read but understood anyway. Grief, loss, love. Why are you telling me this? Because you said she deserves better. You're right. She does. She deserves to grow up safe and loved and normal. And the only time I've ever seen her truly happy, the only time I've seen her be a child is when she's with you. His hand came up to cover hers, pressing her palm flat against his pulse. You can't leave. Not because I'm your employer, not because of the contracts, but because you're the only person she trusts completely, the only one who doesn't look at her and see a liability. Chinhi. And because when I saw that man approach you today when Stoneface called and said someone from Jiangmi was targeting you, I felt the same terror I felt the night Jinho died. His thumb brushed across her. Knuckles. Which means you're not just the nanny anymore. You're... He stopped, swallowed hard. Anna filled in the blank herself. A weakness. Mine, he corrected. His other hand came up to cup her face, tilting it toward him. You're mine to protect. Mine to... She kissed him. It wasn't delicate or hesitant. She grabbed his collar with both hands and pulled him toward her, and he made a sound low in his throat like he'd been waiting for this, needing this. His arms went around her waist, hauling her closer, and the kiss turned desperate. He tasted like coffee and something darker. His hands were in her hair, on her back, everywhere. She felt his tattoos under her palms, felt the rapid beat of his heart, and thought wildly that this was insane, dangerous, completely unprofessional. Stay. He breathed against her mouth. Please stay. I'm terrified, she admitted. So am I. He kissed her again, softer this time. Stay anyway. So she did. For 3 more weeks, they existed in a strange new equilibrium. Chinhi came for breakfast every morning, stayed for dinner some nights, taught Minji to play chess and Anna to defend herself basic moves, things that could buy her time if she ever needed it again. They didn't talk about the kiss. But sometimes, when Minji wasn't looking, his hand would brush hers, or she'd catch him watching her with an expression that made her skin flush. It felt like they were building something fragile and precious. It felt like maybe, just maybe, this could work. The attack came on a Thursday. Chinhi was at a meeting across the city, something about shipping routes that required his personal attention. Anna had just put Minji down for her afternoon nap when she heard the sound of crash, distant but unmistakable. Gunfire. Her blood went cold. She ran to Minji's room, scooped the child from bed. Minji was groggy, confused. Anna, shh, baby. We're playing a game. We have to be very quiet. The safe room. Chinhi had shown it to her during one of his security briefings, a reinforced closet in her bedroom with a steel door and a satellite phone. She ran. More gunshots. Closer now. Shouting in Korean. She got Minji inside the safe room and locked the door. Her hands were shaking so badly it took 3 tries. The satellite phone was mounted on the wall. She grabbed it and dialed the number, the one Chinhi had made her memorize, the one she'd hoped she'd never need. Stoneface answered on the first ring. Status. They're in the house. I'm in the safe room with Minji. Stay there. Boss is coming. How many? The line went dead. Anna heard them in her apartment now. Heavy footsteps. Things being overturned. They were searching. Minji was crying silently, her face buried in Anna's shoulder. Anna held her tight and tried to think. The safe room was secure, but not indefinitely. Eventually they'd find it. Eventually they'd break through. She couldn't just wait. Her eyes scanned the small space. Fire extinguisher. First aid kit. Emergency water. And there, in the corner, a toolbox left by the contractor who'd installed the room. Anna set Minji down gently. Baby, I need you to be so brave for me. Can you do that? Minji nodded, tears streaming down her face. If anyone comes through that door who isn't me or your uncle, you scream as loud as you can. Okay? Where are you going? Anna picked up the toolbox and felt the weight of it. Heavy, solid. She could work with this. To keep you safe. She unlocked the door. The apartment was destroyed. Furniture overturned, drawers emptied, glass everywhere. Two men were in her kitchen, one rifling through cabinets, the other speaking into a phone. Anna's heart was a drum in her chest. She'd never fought anyone before, never hurt anyone. But these men had come for Minji, and that made them enemies in a way her fear couldn't touch. The water on the stove was still boiling from when she'd been making tea. She grabbed the pot with a dish towel and flung the contents at the nearest man. His scream was satisfying. The other man spun toward her, reaching for something at his waist, a gun, but Anna was already moving. She swung the toolbox with every ounce of strength she had. It connected with his head with a sickening crack, and he went down. The burned man was still screaming, clawing at his face. Anna grabbed the wine bottle from the counter, good wine this time, the kind Chinhi had brought her, and smashed it over his head. Both men were down. She stood there, breathing hard, shaking, covered in wine and adrenaline. More footsteps. Running toward her, she grabbed a piece of broken glass, held it like a knife, and prepared to fight. The door burst open. Chinhi came through it like a force of nature, gun raised, security team behind him. His eyes swept the room. The downed men, the broken furniture, Anna standing there with blood on her hands and murder in her eyes, and something in his expression cracked. Minji. His voice was raw. Safe room. She's safe. He crossed the room in 2 strides and pulled Anna against him, one arm crushing her close while his other hand kept the gun trained on the fallen men. She could feel his heart pounding, could hear the sharp inhale like he'd been holding his breath. "You're hurt." He touched her temple, and his fingers came away red. "Not my blood." She was shaking now, the adrenaline crash hitting hard. "They came for her. I couldn't, I had to." "You did." His lips pressed to her forehead, fierce and quick. "You protected her." Stoneface was securing the attackers, zip-tying wrists with efficient brutality. Another guard was checking rooms. The apartment that had been her sanctuary was now a crime scene. Chinhi pulled back just enough to cup her face in both hands, the gun pressed cold against her cheek. "I need to see her. I need to know." Anna led him to the safe room, unlocked the door with shaking fingers. Minji launched herself at Chinhi with a wail, and he caught her, gun clattering to the floor as he wrapped both arms around her. He sank to his knees, holding her, checking her for injuries with hands that trembled slightly. "I'm okay, Uncle," Minji sobbed. "Anna kept me safe." He looked up at Anna over Minji's head, and his eyes were bright with something that might have been tears. "I know," he said roughly. "I know she did." An hour later, the apartment had been cleared. The attackers were gone, taken somewhere Anna didn't want to know about. Security had been tripled. A trauma cleanup team was on standby. Chinhi hadn't let go of Minji. He sat on the couch with her, curled in his lap, murmuring reassurances in Korean while Anna sipped water with shaking hands. Lieutenant Choi appeared in the doorway, his expression grim. "Sajangnim, the council is convening. They want to discuss the breach. Tell them I'll be there tomorrow. They're demanding tonight." The Jangmi attempted assassination. Tomorrow. Chinhei's voice was absolute. Or never. Their choice. Choi hesitated, then bowed and left. Minji had finally fallen asleep against Chinhei's chest, exhausted by fear. He looked down at her with an expression Anna had never seen before, soft, vulnerable, utterly devastated. "She fought them off," he said quietly. "Anna fought 3 armed men with boiling water and a wine bottle." "2 men," Anna corrected. "And I was terrified the entire time." "You stayed anyway." He met her eyes. "You could have locked yourself in with Minji and waited. But you came out fighting. I didn't think. They were going to hurt her." "Yes." Something in his voice had changed, hardened. "They were going to take her, use her to control me. And they would have succeeded if..." He stopped, jaw clenching. "I'm going to end this. Tonight. The Jangmi wanted a war. They'll get one." Chinhi. He stood carefully, Minji still sleeping in his arms. "Tomorrow, every organization in Seoul will know that Anna Fieri is under my personal protection. That harming her is the same as harming me. That she is. He paused, then said it clearly, deliberately. That she is mine. Anna's breath caught. That will make me a bigger target. No. His smile was sharp and dangerous. That will make you untouchable. Because anyone who tries will face the full weight of Guillaume Riong, and they'll learn what I do to people who threaten my family. Your family, she repeated softly. Mine. He shifted Minji gently. Both of you. If you'll have us. Anna stood, crossed to him, and kissed him softly. I already texted you. I need you now once. Seems a little late to back out. His laugh was quiet, almost surprised. You'll stay? Even after today? Especially after today. She touched his face, tracing the line of his jaw. Someone has to teach Minji better chess strategy. And someone has to make sure you eat breakfast. And someone, he murmured against her lips, has to remind me what it feels like to be human. We can work out a schedule, she said, and kissed him again. Outside, Seoul glittered in the darkness. Somewhere in the city, the Council of Elders was gathering. Somewhere, the Jiangmi clan was planning their next move. Somewhere, violence was waiting. But in the ruins of Anna's apartment, with Minji sleeping peacefully and Chinhi's arms around her, Anna felt something she hadn't felt in months. Safe, seen, home. The war was coming. Let it come. She'd already proven she knew how to fight.